Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my week 45 reading wrap up. Yes, this is my weekly video where I talk about every book that I read this week, and I think we have passed 500 this week. I have to check because Goodreads doesn't track all of my fanfic, so I need to check my other spreadsheet, but I think we just passed 500, which is kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Yeah, this is exciting. Oh, we've got snow here in Fargo, which is kind of exciting. I don't know. Or maybe just a fact of life. Maybe I want to make things exciting that aren't. Who knows? Who knows? But we go with the flow as best as we can, right? So yeah, this week consisted of getting through some rereads that I needed, totally falling into a new series and binging a bunch of them, and working on Christmas projects. So that has been amazing. If you are a channel member and you're watching this video and you haven't checked out the community page yet, there's a post where I have some action items for you to do. So I'm making that announcement at the beginning of this because I know this is the video that the most of my people watch. So if you're a channel member, please check the community page, okay? I have something that is time sensitive that you are not going to want to miss out. So please go do that. Speaking of channel members, we do have a new channel member to welcome, and that would be Nina Quill. She joined at the Faded Friend level. So thank you so much, Nina, for choosing to support my channel and help keep me going. We're going to be going into tax season right after Christmas, and I am a bit terrified. So the more support that I have, the better that I feel going into those things, like being the personality in front of the camera and growing and learning with you guys. That is the fun stuff, but the financial and the business part of it is the stressful parts, right? We also have 4 new patrons who joined. Oh, I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed to have you. And actually 2 of them are double dippers. So we have Lorena, who is a channel member and now a patron. And we have Lizelle, who is a channel member and now a patron. And Lizelle actually has her own channel. So you should definitely go check her out. She reads a lot of books that I love, as well as I find some really great books from her as well. So check her out. We also have Jessica L., who joined. Thank you so much, Jessica. Welcome. And we have Kayla with no last name or letter there at all. But Kayla, if you're watching this and you know it's you, welcome. Thank you so much for that support. Every little bit helps me. Every little bit added together adds up and helps me be able to keep going, you know, which is amazing. So we are going to get into the books I read this week, which is 11. I read 11 books this week. Hold on, I'm looking down at my notes. In case you are new here, this is your first video. I have a Google form that I fill out for every book that I read, so that when I do my wrap-ups, I remember people's names, I remember the tropes, I remember trigger warnings. It's very helpful so that I have all the information I have to share with you. My throat needs that tea today. So when we started week 45, we were still doing the fan fiction readathon. Yes, if you didn't know about that, I really enjoy reading fan fiction. I discovered it at the beginning of this year. Well, not like, more rediscovered it. Rediscovered it and realized that so many of my followers love it. And so we did a readathon, reading as much fan fiction as we could. And I had a couple that I was working on. So one of these that I finished, I have a physical copy of because my friend and co-host for the readathon, which I did do a vlog for that. I will link it up there if you want to watch it. She is a bookbinder. And so she doesn't sell these. This isn't someone you can get a commission from. She does it for the joy of doing it. And one of her favorite fics she's ever read is Finding Himself. And I believe you say this, Minnie Sinu is the author of this, and this was my first time ever reading a Cedric and Hermione fic. And yes, Cedric is disabled at the beginning of this, and he is not just at the beginning, he becomes injured and looks like he'll have a long-term disability now because of a curse that gets put on him in the graveyard. So what happens, that's kind of like the inciting thing that makes this a like alternate world. So even more than like some AU fics, really this one has like one thing that changes it and then is what's different the whole time. And that thing in this one is that Cedric doesn't die at the end of Goblet of Fire. He and Harry both live, but he gets hit with a curse. Lucius Malfoy hurls a curse at him, and it's meant to completely paralyze him. They are able to stop it, lock it down, slow it down. It will eventually continue its progress, but it's been stopped in his spine. And so what happens in this book is it starts right with that. Like it opens with him and Harry are in the maze at the end of the Goblet of Fire, and they both touch the cup, and then like it goes from there, but he doesn't get killed immediately. I mean, he doesn't die there. And so this starts with him and his summer. He has to stay in the hospital, and Hermione actually ends up being the one to go visit him as like Harry's on behalf of Harry, right? Because Harry wants to come and see him, but he's not allowed to leave the safety of where he's at because now Voldemort is back. So it continues with, this is basically like Order of the Phoenix, but we're in Cedric and Hermione's point of view, and it starts with him still dating Cho, and then him and Hermione, they've never really interacted before. This book is very heavy. It hurts my wrist. They've never really interacted before. And they realize they have a lot in common. So I did very much enjoy this fic. I'm actually going to put it down now and show you a picture because it is very heavy. It hurts my wrist to hold that sucker up. And I definitely understand why this is Mel's favorite. Like, the things that I loved, Cedric and Hermione are a great pairing, y'all. They really are, and it totally makes sense. And like, they never interacted in the books, obviously, and then he's dead, so, you know, she only ever even mentions him once. Like, she never addresses him or anything, but they have so much in common. They're both very smart. He's definitely even more like logical than her, because she might be someone who's logical, but she's still young. I mean, he's young too, but he's 2 years older than her. And she's also still has that Gryffindor hard-headedness. So there are like quite a few times in the book where they argue, and Cedric is like, you are being too Gryffindor about this. You're not thinking through the consequences of your actions. You think like 80%, and then the other 20% is where you just jump into something. And this was also a lot about, like, this is called finding himself because, you know, Cedric definitely had one path that he was headed down before all this happened. And now he's kind of pulled into the rebellion as well, because what makes this so cool, what makes it a difference is now Harry isn't the only one who directly saw Voldy, you know, like Cedric was there. Cedric is also affected. And it's a lot harder for the Ministry to discount Cedric, who has both of his parents, who is smart and who is head boy at Hogwarts and has been injured and hurt because of this. And he's a lot harder to discount than an orphan who, you know, was raised in the Muggle world, right? So that was really fascinating. So the downsides to this one for me were, it is basically a high school romance. It did have explicit sex. Hermione's a virgin in this, obviously. Very slow build up to that, because again, like, he's dating someone else in the beginning. He doesn't just dump Cho out of it, but he realizes that the man he is now, like, Cho isn't the right person for him. So poor Cho gets dumped for someone else. Well, I mean, in this one, it'd be the first time, because the stuff that's happened in the other one hasn't happened. But yeah, so it is a high school romance, basically, them having to sneak around to be together. Very, like I said, very slow build up. And then, and this is a pretty big spoiler warning for this book. But number one, I know not everyone's going to read this because it's, you know, not everyone's reading fic. But also, I didn't know about this trigger warning because I didn't know about it, and it's okay. Like, it's okay. It happens. But this has an underage pregnancy. conceive, even though they're using birth control, because of reasons like someone messes with their birth control that they're using. And then there is like kind of directly after finding out about this pregnancy, there's a miscarriage. And I don't love how it's used to like literally like garner sympathy for the characters. And I'm not saying the author was reckless with this, because like there's another book after this one in this fic universe, and I definitely feel like there will be more talked about with it. But I just personally have a problem with pregnancies being introduced to solely be like wiped out immediately. Like I've read it in other books too, and it just doesn't sit well with me, and I wasn't prepared, so it kind of soured a book for me. That coupled with how long this book was, how like they're both in school, and basically how it's a lot of the exact same things, like the same like storyline-ish that's happening in in Order of the Phoenix. Like we have Umbridge being evil, we have, you know, people trying to gaslight Harry and Cedric. So it was fascinating, and I really don't discount that at all. But it ended up being a 4 at the end of all of that. Like I've just been talking about this for 10 minutes. Because there was just a lot that was repetitive, not enough like steam for me. I don't care, I'm saying it. And then like some things thrown in right at the end that were painful, and not enough things were changed. Like this one is a what if question. It's more of just like, what if Cedric lived, and a lot of the same things all still happen, and I kind of wanted some of those things not to happen to show more ripple effect, but that's not how this author chose to go. So yeah, this was a 4-star for me. It was a 2 on the spice scale, and trigger warnings were there is torture of children, an underage pregnancy, miscarriage, and death of a loved one. But yeah, this is amazing. I will try to put a link to this one. This one is, I believe, on fanfic.net, which is not a site that I use, but I had the physical book. Because you guys know, like, I really only want books that are on AO3. That's how I kind of keep my... I want fics to be finished, and I want fics to be on AO3, and that's how I personally narrow down the very vast expanse of choices that we have of books, right? So anyway, moving along, because we talked about that forever, but some of these will be a bit quicker to talk about because they are copies. So then I listened to A Court of Frost and Starlight. I was actually good. I got to listen to a lot of books this week because of working on projects. I really dug into some audiobooks. And so, yeah, this is book like 3.5 or book 4 in, I mean, it's basically a full-length book. Like, this might be a novella for Sarah J. Maas, but we all know how she is about novellas. Like, this is 230 pages. Tower of Dawn was also originally supposed to be a novella, so we don't take Sarah too seriously when she does that. But here's my beautiful Dusty Bookshop book covers for this. And yeah, this is a little bit amount of time after the big battle in Court of Wings and Ruin, and it is time for the winter solstice and also Feyre's birthday, and we get to see where everyone's at, and we're kind of setting the board for Silver Flames, because we actually get the POVs of Nesta and Cassian in this one. It's mostly some, like I said, it's Feyre and Rhys, and then we're getting introduced to, we see more of Cassian, and then we have like one of Nesta. So it very much was setting up where we are. The fact that there is some trouble still brewing in the Night Court, like the world is not magically fixed just because we got rid of Hybern, like he was one evil bad guy. There are still people who are going to cause problems, like that's a thing. And also we just see Nesta really like spiraling into her despair. So that's definitely going on. But I mean, for me, this was a 5, like it's 5-star. I don't care. It's 5-star book. 2 on the spice scale, because we do get a little bit naughty still, but it's still not as intense as it's going to be like when we get to Silver Flames, right? Okay, then I read a little quickie called Hollow Grove by Leisha Ko. I had meant to read this for Halloween, but you know, life is busy. So this one is a spicy little novella. This is part of the Hollow Nights which have been like different holiday novellas that have all had like different kinks in them, usually like primal play or BDSM kinky goodness. And so this one is actually taking place at like a murder mystery night that the heroine's friend is having. And I think, is it a best friend's brother? I think it's a best friend's brother one, which is funny. I've read a lot of those recently. And it's one of those two where like she thinks they're enemies, but he really has liked her all this time, and he finally makes his move. So there's some primal play in this, having to do with her running and him chasing, and then he's also a pleasure dom. So his name is Dorian and her name is Evelyn, and literally he tortures her with pleasure, which I don't have a problem for that at all. So that one was 4 stars and 3 on the spice scale. There aren't really trigger warnings. The trigger warnings, like it's content warnings for this one, are the kinks. Like there's primal play and unrelenting orgasms. So if that's a content warning for you, well, I don't know what to say. All right, then I read another fic, actually. Now, this is funny because the fanfic readathon was over, but I had gotten a lot of recommendations during it, and because I'd spent so much of the time reading Finding Himself, I didn't read as many fics during the readathon as I wanted to, so I read a couple more. So this one I read was The Rise and Fall and Rebirth of Hermione Granger, and this is by Miss Parker. Of course, I'll leave the link down below. This one is on AO3. This one was novella length-ish, like maybe it was about 200 pages. This one is actually an underage student teacher one, so there is that. But sadly, why I didn't love this one as much as I wanted to, because when I tell you what it's about, you'll understand. This one was rated mature, and it's funny to me because on AO3, the ratings are so interesting. You're either explicit, which explicit just means like if there's even like one sex scene where like it's detailed, it has to be called explicit. But mature, there can be sex in it that isn't explicit. So sometimes a mature book can like be as steamy as an explicit, but because of the words used, it's not. I don't know. But I was kind of disappointed because this ended up being a mature one, and I really wanted it to be explicit. So I was feeling let down when we finally got to the spicy time. But because it's a student teacher, it's Hermione and Snape. In her 6th year, she discovers she has cancer. She has like leukemia, I think is what it's supposed to be. And there is like treatments that they can do, like they're supposed to be able to, like wizards don't get cancer very often. But they start treating her for that. And it turns out that Snape lost his mother to sickness. And when he started, like he had a special way that he was treating his mom, but because she was older and it was like too late, she died. But when Hermione isn't getting better from the treatments they're doing at St. Mungo's, Snape undertakes her healing. And the way he does that is that basically she takes a semester off of Hogwarts. Her and Snape quarantine in a part of the castle because he's going to strip her immune system and do some things to basically eradicate every cell of cancer from her body in an extremely painful process that takes a long time, and she can't be around any germs or illness, so the only person she's around is Snape for all of this. So during their time where he's healing her, like they're alone together, and there's not anything romantic really happening while he's healing her. Like she's literally so sick and all these things, and it's more so once she's actually like going back to life that she misses him and the connection they had. So there is still like underage like sex that happens in this, but he definitely does like keep his distance until, well, I mean, he doesn't because it's forced proximity. They're forced to be together while he heals her, and they both fall in love, but then they're not like officially together until we're like through that and everything. So I thought this was really sweet. If you aren't someone who needs lots of steam in yours, that's great. When I'm reading fic, like that's what I want. I want to see my characters being nasty. But this was one of the sweetest, like, Snape and Hermione's that I've read. Like, there's only one or two that was sweeter than this. So I gave this 4 stars. It's only a 1.5 on my spice scale. The trigger warnings were for cancer, childhood illness, and like treatment that's extremely painful and hard to watch. So just know that. And then, yeah, you might not like it because it's rated mature instead of explicit. And yeah, but you might like it. It's good stuff. Okay, so then we're getting to the series that I binged a bunch of it. So like I said, I was working on projects today. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. And one of the books that I had on my TBR for this month was to read The Longing of Lone Wolves. Now, all of the books currently out in this series, the audiobooks are available on Anyplay. They're all on Anyplay, which is fantastic. I love Anyplay. You pay a monthly or quarterly fee for them, and you have access to their catalog of audiobooks for that monthly fee. There's no limit to how many. There are just some quirks of the there are quirks of the of the app. Like, no joke about that. So oh my, she has her name in the back. My name is straightforward. Lana Peherchik. I've been called Lana Price Check, Parachikawak, and Pressed Chicken. Lana Peck, that girl. That's funny. She has it written in the back. So Lana Peherchik. I still can't say it. Anyway, this is book 1 in the Fey Guardian series, and this is the first book in the Season of the Wolf. So far this series is made up of there's 3 trilogies. The third trilogy isn't finished yet, but there's the Season of the Wolf, the Season of the Vampire, and then there's gonna be Season of the Elves, I think. And anyway, I started the audiobook for this, and it has one of my, the second one has one of my favorite male narrators. Either way, there's some great narrators in this. If you buy the physical books, I only even bought the paperback. There are some, I know the hardcovers are even prettier, but there are illustrations in here. I believe the author has done them. I think that's what I heard Crystal say. Oh no, okay. Maju Mary Wild. I don't know, but it's beautiful. There is really cool, there's maps. I need to look at these. I literally listened to all of these. So, there's a picture. But anyway, so this world is a, paranormal futuristic fantasy world where Earth had been, ruined by humans. And so now the Fae rule it, and humans are, hated and hunted. And they destroyed the world with metals and plastics. And, yeah, so our heroine, her name is Clark. She wakes up in this lake, which that's what that picture was there. And she's spewing out some stuff out of her mouth. And basically she's woken up 2,000 years in the future. The world was getting really dystopian where she was at. She lived in modern day Las Vegas, and there was this great freeze that came through, and it literally froze her and her friends right in place. It froze them, and they've woken up 2,000 years later. And where she wakes up, there are some people about to kill her. I can't remember if they're monsters or who it was that was going to kill her, but she is about to be killed. And we have Rush, our hero, who is a Fey Guardian. He's a wolf shifter. He has been cursed because he broke a law, which was the unsanctioned breeding law or whatever. He had impregnated a prostitute. I think it was a prostitute or a sex worker of the time, and she was pregnant and had the baby. And so he has a son who is important later on, but he was cursed for the last 50 years to never be seen. So no one can see him or remember him. And he's invisible. And what he does is he kills and hunts humans who are doing bad, as well as he takes down enemies. And so he's just this silent killer, but he's a little bit crazy. He hasn't had any human interaction in all this time. And when he sees this human about to be attacked, he isn't going to do anything about it really, but then she can see him. And he is what? And so he decides to use her to break his curse. So if he hands her over to the Order, she's the ticket to having his curse removed. So he tricks her into a bargain with him to get her to go with him. But Clark has some gifts, and also she's his fated mate. So it's not going to be as easy as he thinks it is. So this really sets up the series. The gift that she has is actually like premonition, and that becomes important. So that's why I shared that. This first book, I actually loved. I gave the first one 5 stars. This was also a channel member recommend, but Crystal had read it, my friend Joe had read it, and the audiobooks were easily available. This series actually is pretty low spice, which I think is great because I didn't miss it. Like this series, this book, we're going to talk about more of it, has so much going on and stuff happening that I didn't feel like bad that there wasn't a ton happening. There's great sexual tension too, but the whole series, I've kind of listed it as like a 2 on my spice scale because there's a lot of like, we're not giving in to our desires, it's enemies to lovers, and that fits the series very well. But like I said, they're so addicting. Like, I'm on the 4th one. We're going to keep talking about this series right now. So I gave this first one 5 stars, and it was a 2 on the spice scale. Trigger warnings really have to do with violence and like attempted assault a couple of times. So it's that kind of thing. But this fantasy world, or this futuristic world, I'm really liking it a lot. So then I read the second book. I started the audiobook right away, and that one was called The Solace of Sharp Claws. So thank you, Lana, for making things difficult to say. Again, listen to this on AnyPlay. And this one is about, so at the end of this book, it's been 3 years, okay? It's been 3 years at like in the epilogue, and Clark has had a vision of one of her friends. So she had 2 other friends that were all like frozen at the same time, and they're all going to play a part in this first trilogy, right? So she has a vision of her friend Laurel waking up, and she also knows that Laurel is Thorne's fated mate. Now, Thorne is Rush's son, the one who, you know, he's 50 years old now, right? And he very much hates his father because he feels abandoned by him. But he's been told by Clark that Laurel is important to finding his mentor Jasper, who is missing. He's been missing for 10 years. And what Clark doesn't say is that she's his mate. So Laurel was a very impressive businesswoman in her time. This is also an interracial romance. I believe she would be African American, is definitely the narrator is. I don't have that book. I would love to see what she looks like, but I'm pretty sure based on who the narrator is and also how she's described. But she was a high-powered businesswoman before the world started falling apart. And she wakes up and wants to go home because she's like, I don't want to be in this dangerous, scary world. And again, we've only been told by Clark that she's the key to finding Jasper, who is Thorne's mentor. So he wants to use her to do that. And Clark says, I've had a vision of Ada, who is the 3rd friend. Me and Rush need to go and get her. She's in danger. You guys figure it out. And so Clark just like leaves them together and is like, you got to handle this. You got to figure your journey out. There you go. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one too. This one was 4 stars for me and 2 on the spice scale. Mostly it was a 4-star. I really liked Laurel, but Thorne was tough for me. Like this one was also like, yes, it's enemies to lovers, but Thorne is so grumpy and very much holds such a grudge against his dad. Like, his dad literally didn't have a choice about what happened. I don't want to spoil everything that happens in the first book, but like Rush didn't have a choice about abandoning his son. He was literally cursed and turned invisible. There was nothing he could do. And so, yeah, it was really hard to see him be so hard on his dad when like he just has to get over it. That's part of his journey. Absolutely, it's part of the journey. And I really liked how we were starting to get introduced to the other guardians and things that were going on and how the women were learning to handle their powers. And again, I don't think this is bad. I was so addicted, but it just didn't have quite the same magic as the first one did. So this one was 4 stars. Still totally loved it. Still continued to binge the series, as you'll find out. So, sorry, microphone issues. Okay, the next I read another fanfic. This one is called From Law to Love, and this one is a Lucius Malfoy and Hermione Granger. This one was pretty short. I think it was like 150, 60 pages is what it worked out to. And this one is a marriage law fic. This one involves like Hermione and Ron are actually about to get married, and this law gets handed down. And everyone in the wizarding world, which when there's a marriage law, which like this is the same as like Devil's Snare was, like a marriage law is a trope that like happens in these, or one of the like things. And everyone gets sent a scroll that has 3 names on it, and they must pick one of those 3 people to marry. And if they don't, they are literally going to have their wand broken and not allowed to do magic anymore, because they need these people to be making babies. And they're supposed to be pregnant by the end of the first year and have a second kid by the end of or like be pregnant by the end of the 3rd year. Like literally they have rules. Okay, they have rules. So Hermione and Ron, this one actually had the most sympathetic view of Ron like ever. So this one does involve slight BDSM, like just little bits of it. And Hermione and Ron actually, like, Ron does that for her. He's not like not an over-doming type of scenario, but there's actually, I don't know, like I really liked it. It made the story very poignant that she wasn't, like, that she didn't have a bad relationship with Ron. Like this was, but it also isn't like you're not like completely devastated either, because we haven't like seen it. But her and Ron are, like, it starts with him getting engaged to her, and they're like going to get married. And the week before this gets laid down, and they have to pick. And so Hermione gets this list, and there's 3 people on it, and one of them picks someone else from their list. The other one is Neville, and Hannah Abbott like was on his list, and they were dating already, so they got to stay together. And then Lucius was the other choice. So like Lucius is literally married to Narcissa, and their marriage is listed as invalid. Now their marriage had been an arranged marriage too, so actually this is just like he's getting put in a second arranged marriage. And he's very like kind, like this isn't an enemies to lovers one, but it definitely reads like a very awkward arranged marriage. And Hermione like kind of shares some fertility information with him about how it works, and so they're only going to have sex like 2 or 3 times a month. And for the first like 6 months, it's very awkward and very like hard for both of them. Like we only really see Hermione's point of view, but she just feels so like used, and not by Lucius, but by this system. And she doesn't even know if she can get pregnant. And they're just feeling really sad and depressed about it. And Lucius notices this, but he doesn't think there's anything he can do. He doesn't think there's a way to make it better at all. And he's watching her slowly, just kind of get sicker, and not sicker, but just like more depressed. So then they have this like heart to heart where Hermione like says the things she needs to make this successful. And she shares a bit about her like sexual interests, and he's very like perked up about that, as well as like what she needs to feel like the connection, which will hopefully help them. So yeah, the author Pet even says like this was really about them like learning to communicate. So as soon as they are finally finding pleasure, this fic is literally over. And I mean, that was the choice of the author. This one also was listed as like mature instead of explicit. So all the sex that they're having when it's like for specific breeding purposes is very like, it definitely feels like assault to both of them. Neither one of them want to be doing it. And then once they actually are exploring each other, it's very much like, yay, they're having good sex, and then it was done. Which again, I needed more steam from this book, and I needed more time of it like working out. Like literally they go from finding out they're pregnant to 2 pages later, the book was over. And again, the author's like, this is the story I wanted to tell. Totally fair. But it was a 3.5, maybe more of a 3 for me. And it was a 1.5 on the spice. So I felt a little let down. Okay, then I read No Good Deed by Marie Sexton. I actually talk a lot about this book in a video that's about to come out because I just had it in a Daddy Kink video. So there's Daddy Kink in this. This is an MM romance. This was book 4 in a series. I have not read the other books in this series. I read this book because it showed up on a list with sounding recommendations in it. So when I read Seraph by Lily Mayne, I was so impressed because sounding is a like sexual act that, or like, you know, a kind of using a toy, kind of a sexual scenario that I have seen in adult entertainment, but never have I read it in a romance, right? Which always makes me curious. Okay, it always makes me curious. And before anyone asks, I promise you, if I read enough books that have this in it, I will make a full taboo or a full like oddly specific whatever video about it, I promise. But this one has sounding in it. And again, I'll say what sounding is. We will use a lovely Mr. Peen to explain. Hello, this is Mr. Squishy Peen. Hello, he's adorable, he's so cute. Sounding involves using these very thin, I don't have a thin one with me, so imagine this is like a very thin rod that gets inserted into the urethra. Again, it's teeny, teeny, tiny. You start with a teeny, tiny one, and it massages the prostate from the inside. And it's not something you can usually just whip out in the BDSM dungeon or something, because it takes skill and patience, and you can like hurt the peen if it's not done well. But it's crazy. And so I had heard of this, I had seen this, and I never read it in a book. And then Seraph was the first one I read where when I saw what the content warnings were, I was like, oh my God, Lily Mayne has the thing in here. And in that, it's a monster romance, and Seraph is able to use his tongue to do the thing. But this one was a contemporary gay romance, and it was actually using the sterilized equipment. That's one of the things that was like literally difficult for me about the Lily Mayne one, is I was like, don't think about how unsanitary this is for him to stick his tongue in there. And not because it's a urethra, but because of germs that could be on his tongue going in there. Not because he wants to stick his tongue in there, because like, do what you want. But I was like, okay, just, this is a fantasy. Pretend the infection isn't a thing, because you do need to be sterilized and no cross-contaminant. Like, anyway, that's why, like, it's not something you think would just show up in a sexy story, because it takes planning and prep. You can't just, you know, it's not just like shoving a butt plug in. Like, you gotta plan it. So what's this book about before I get to the sounding in it? This is a gay romance, friends to lovers, kind of a second chance. This couple was never actually together. This was Charlie and Jonah. Jonah actually dated Gray, which was one of the other doms in this series. Like I said, this is book 4. And they had dated, and they had kind of a toxic relationship. They just did not get along. They didn't vibe together. Their kinks didn't fully vibe together. But these group of 4 doms, like, they do like play parties together, and Jonah and him had dated. Jonah had a really good connection with Charlie. And when Jonah and Gray broke up officially, he had a one-night stand with Charlie, and then he like left town because he didn't want to stay and make things awkward. Fast forward, it's 6 years later, and Jonah is back in town to actually donate a kidney to someone. And he asked Charlie if he can stay at his house. Or did I say Jonah is back? Yeah, and Charlie, he is a nurse. He actually also does pop-up medical care out of his home, which is part of the conflict of the story, because there is a drug addict who lives next door who thinks that he has narcotics in his home, which, I mean, he does have some, but he mostly isn't doing that kind of thing. He's doing free clinic help for someone. But anyway, and Jonah finally is sharing all his feelings with Charlie, and Charlie's like, I don't know if I want to like risk my friendship with Gray for this person who's been gone for 6 years. But they have amazing chemistry. Their kinks very much line up. Like I said, this has daddy kink in it. in a very like beautiful, beautiful way. Also, Charlie is definitely a bear. He is big. He has a tummy. He feels self-conscious sometimes. And Jonah has to tell him like, oh, I just love how big you are. I feel so protected when you hug me and love me. And I love you. And then Charlie introduces him to sounding at one point in the book. Like I said, there is a very hot scene where Charlie is showing it to him on himself. Like he's like, let me show it to you. This is amazing. And showing him how it works and like what it does, and it was really hot. And it happens a few times in this book. Like it isn't just the one time, and it was amazing. So that was mostly what I loved about this book, though. It did get very melodramatic at the ending. Like I said, there was a drug addict who's trying to cause problems, and it really like blows some stuff up. And I don't know that I care enough to like read the other books in this series. I don't know that I do, but I'm glad I read this. I'm glad this kink was in there. And if you would like to read a book that has that kink in it, I think this was a good one, because Charlie is also like explaining it to Jonah, which I always love when an author explains it. So it's not just, oh, this is happening in a monster romance, and if you know what it is, then you know. Like, no, it's called sounding. They have the proper tools. They do it the proper way. This would be a good one to read. So I gave this a 3.5 star, and it was a 4.5 on the spice, though, because there is like these doms are their own kind of sex club. So there was sharing that happened at the they have like a orgy together. There is, like I said, daddy kink, characters in peril, and talk of like organ donation and long-term illness in here. So okay, then I read book 3 in the Fae Guardian series. So I read The Dreams of Broken Kings, and this one is about Jasper and Ada. So we have Jasper, who is who Thorn and Laurel are trying to find. He has been kept in a very, he's been kept in a fighting ring, locked in an iron mask. And for Fae, that is literally like poisonous. Like he has these metal spikes holding this mask in to him. Like it's awful. Like it's awful. And because of that, like his memory has been affected. Like he's had these ruins and curses put on him, so he can't remember who he is. But he is a Fae king. He's a Fae king who, he's a Fae prince. He's the bastard son of a Fae king, and that king, like, he's been put in this. And so Ada and Jasper, I don't want to spoil it, but the beginning of this is her waking up like the other two ladies have, spewing stuff out of her mouth, not knowing where she is, and Jasper waking up beside her. Like, they woke up alone together in the woods, and they don't know how they got there. So yeah. And we'll find out how that happened and what went on. So this was another one I really liked. This one was also a 4-star for me and a 2 on the spice scale. Okay, we're almost done. I can put this down now. Yesterday, I did a reread of Sea of Ruin. Yes, this is my beautiful Mystic Box copy. I have 3 copies of this book, with the other ones in my room. We are doing the live show for the 2nd anniversary of Rake Appreciation Society, which is my historical romance book club with my best friend, Crystal. It will be on her channel on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central, and we'll be talking about this. This is in my top books of all time, and I can proudly say that. I was nervous. I'm always nervous when I reread a favorite book, okay? I am. Especially one that I've loved for 2.5 years. It's scary for me, okay? Like, will this book hold up? Will I still love it as much? I've read a lot more dark historical. I've read a lot more menages. I've read a lot more of everything by now. And I can proudly say that this is still one of my favorite books. This is about pirate Bennett Sharp. She is 21 years old and she pirates her own ship. And at the beginning of this, she has a husband she's been on the run from. His name is Priest Farrell, the Farrell Priest. And she ditched him 2 years ago when she discovered that he was in love with someone else. And she found this love letter that was written by his lover. And so she was like, well, fuck you. And so she took her ship and she left him there. And he's been trying to track her down ever since. Now, in the beginning of this book, he finds her and he steals something from her to get her to work with him. And she's like, no, it's not happening. You broke my heart. You know what kind of people we are and what fierce lovers we are, and the fact that you would do this to me, I just can't get over it. So through a few things happening and things going awry, she ends up sacrificing herself so that her ship and priest, who is locked in the hold of her ship, can escape. And she turns herself over to a pirate hunter named Ashley Cutler, who is on one of the most magnificent pirate hunting ships on the seas. And he's going to take her to England and have her be hanged. And she's going to use her body, her mind, her wiles to make Ashley fall for her and hopefully not kill her, or distract him long enough that priest and her crew will come and rescue her. But Ashley is not an easily manipulated man, okay? He's very dangerous. He's very seductive. He's very beautiful. And he also can see right through her and takes no shit. And the mind games and the sexual games and the things that happen between the three main characters in this book, because yes, there's three main characters, even though this is all in Bennett's point of view, are crazy. Okay, I listened to the audiobook. Roxy Isles does an amazing job. The accents that she does for Priest and Ashley just blow my mind. Big trigger warnings. There is dubious / a little almost kind of non-consent between two of the main characters in this. And then there is rape, not by the main characters, but a lot of it. Bennett goes through a lot. There's torture, there's beatings, there is slavery talked about on here. There's a lot, okay? This is not easy. This is a dark historical romance, okay? It's Pam Godwin, okay? The lady who wrote All My Dark Loves. But this is my favorite book she's written. This is one of my favorite books of all time. This book holds up, and I can't wait for the absolute gush fest we are going to have on Wednesday, okay? I cannot wait. I'm brimming with it, okay? All right, the last book that we need to talk about, I just finished last night. I was dragging my feet because I didn't want to finish it, and that is His Pretty Little Queen by Nikki Harris. This is book 5 in the Kids of the District, but it's kind of the second book in the story arc about Fawn and Clay. Now, I was supposed to read book 1 in this series in September, I think, and I actually have those 2 books, and I will definitely read them. But then I saw a post about what the tropes were for this book, and the one before this, His Pretty Little Burden, and it was a like heroine who was pregnant and trying to find her father, and she ends up in the hands of her father's enemy, which is Clay. And then Clay is a dom, and he just sees her as this very like helpless woman that he's going to use to get revenge against his enemy, but instead he falls very deeply for her. And their dynamics match up and all these things. Now, in His Pretty Little Burden, we went through some traumatic things. We find out some rough stuff that's happened to her, and we pick this book up kind of right where we left off. Now, Fawn doesn't have a great self-esteem to begin with, and all the things she's been through, she's really questioning if Clay loves her. Also, Clay has a wife. He has a lesbian wife who is amazing, and it doesn't look like she's gonna get a book, and I really want her to get a book. Like, I may have to petition Nikki Harris for this. But they were married in a political marriage for the mob, and him and his wife, like, they're best friends, but they are not sexually involved. They don't love each other that way. And they've always had their own paramours, sometimes the same paramour that they will share back and forth. But he is married. Like, this technically has cheating in it, so know that. But Clay is trying to still protect her from her father, who we now know doesn't have great intentions, as well as make sure his family is secure. So there's a lot. There's a lot of secrets that come out. There's a lot of content warnings for this one. There was, discussion of the loss of a child that happened, like a loss of pregnancy that happened in the last one. There was abuse by a parent. There is talk of the assault that the heroine had been through. There is gore and violence in this as well. So there's a lot. But revisiting this couple, I just really loved it. I feel the passion between these two so much. Like, I really, really liked it. I felt like the ending was a little rushed for this couple at the end. And we don't really get to see into the future for them because there's one more book in the series that's going to be about the last brother. Because I know like the 3 books that I haven't read are about the other 2 brothers, or the sister, whatever, the other characters. And this one's going to be about the last brother. And so they don't skip that far ahead in time because, you know, that would spoil what's going to happen. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one. But I just wanted just a little bit more of these 2. Like I wish I'd felt more rounded out with that. But I really loved Fawn's character growth. And there's some great kinky stuff in here. So this one doesn't fully have a daddy kink, but it does have BDSM and dynamic play. Definitely a little bit of age play. Like he likes that she's young. And like, there's definitely breeding kink in here. There is, yeah, there's lots of kinky aspects. We'll just say that. It was a good time. So yeah. But anyway, those are the 11 books that I read in week 45 of 2022. If you'd like to know the other books that I've read this year, I have a playlist with all of my weekly wrap-ups, which have all the 500 plus books that I've read this year. I have a playlist with Taboo Romance Rex where I talk about things like daddy kink and primal play and what else? Pegging, all the good stuff. I have a full list of that. And yeah, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Check out the links down below if you'd like to support me in one of those ways. And I'll see you next time. Bye.